Welcome to KRQE's New Mexico News Insiders. Here's Gabrielle Burkhart and Chris McKee. Sponsored by New Mexico PBS.
We've had some major turnover with federal law enforcement here locally. Both guys who headed up the DWI corruption scandal that we've been covering here extensively in New Mexico are now out. That scheme they investigated and prosecuted involves law enforcement referring their DWI arrestees to a local attorney's office who take high-dollar cash amounts from the DWI suspect in exchange for a case dismissal.
So that investigation continues now more than a year after it became public in early 2024. And as of right now, here we are on May 6, 2025. 8 people are now facing consequences in the federal court system in relation to it. That includes 5 former law enforcement officers, and the masterminds behind this being former defense attorney Thomas Clear III and his paralegal Rick Mendez. They have all accepted plea deals here at this point to criminal charges for their roles in this corruption scheme.
Yeah, and the 2 federal guys at the top of this investigation that I'm referring to who've now left their jobs are former U.S. Attorney Alex Ubaez. We expected he'd be forced to step down as the new Trump administration took office and Trump would get to pick his own U.S. attorney, which he has. We did an exit interview with Ubaez on the podcast that you can go back in your feed and listen to. But the latest departure was under different circumstances.
Yeah, that departure is that of the head of the local Albuquerque FBI office, Special Agent in Charge Raul Bujanda, also a former podcast guest here. He stepped away from his role leading that local office and retiring basically from that role after a long career in law enforcement. The decision, it did surprise quite a few people, including some of us here in the newsroom. So our KRQE News 13 anchor, Dean Staley, sat down with Raul Bujanda recently during this last week of his on the job, which was really in late April. He asked him about everything from that investigation into the DWI scandal to his thoughts on crime in New Mexico and the state's youth gun crime problem. So this is a chance for us to kind of present an interview in a little bit of a different format than we normally do.
Yeah, and you'll get to hear a lot about this in this discussion. So here is Dean Staley's interview with FBI Special Agent in Charge Raul Bujanda.
So first of all, let's talk about, because we have you, and I'd like to get you on the record about the DWI scandal before you leave. Generally, how did that affect you? What struck you about that when you first learned about it?
So I think when we first learned about it, which was the effect that everyone had that's come to us and talked to us about it, that nobody thought it was as systemic as it was, and that it lasted for as many years that was actually happening, and that it kind of connected tangentially on different things that were being done, and more than anything, just practices that were just kind of passed on from year after year. So here you had actually, I truly do believe that people were coming into the profession that wanted to do the right thing, and then started to see some things that weren't being done properly, like this scam that we're talking about. But instead of reporting it, they just decided to be a part of it because they felt that was accepted. So that was probably the most surprising thing, is they coming in with the good intention to do the right thing, but they decided to just go along because they didn't want to cause any waves or any kind of ripples, and actually just report it. They should have, at a minimum, always reported to superior and said, hey, this is happening, this is something that needs to be looked at. Instead, they decided to just go along. That was probably the most surprising thing. And that it wasn't just one agency with just a couple of bad apples here, but it was something that seemed to transcend from one agency to the other, where people knew about it, right? Like, there were so many opportunities for someone to just say, this is wrong, we need to do something about it, someone needs to look at it. Whether they report it within their department, maybe they go outside their department, or they should have just reported it to the FBI, right? That is our whole mission, public corruption, but nobody chose to do that.
In the course of your career, big?
Oh, I agree. I think it was very big, especially in a community like ours, with the population of this state. I think it's just unacceptable. You almost, it was, a lot of people have given Harold a hard time about different things, when things were reported and whatnot, but I'll give him credit where credit is due. When he found out exactly what was going on, he went all in, and is still all in on wanting to do the right thing, to weed out all those bad apples, because there's no place for them in law enforcement. Doesn't mean APD or whatever agency, there's just no place for them in law enforcement.
We had Harvey Johnson plead today, APD cop.
Right.
How many more?
So, we're not done yet. It's an ongoing investigation. I'd like to be able to say, I really actually would, and that's sincere. Like, I would really want to say that this is over, it's done, we found them all, there's no more to follow up on. You know, everyone can feel good that we got all the bad apples out. Unfortunately, I can't say that.
How many more?
A few more.
Dozens?
Not dozens, but a few more.
How much higher will it go?
I think we're at a point where, and this again, because it's the length of time more than anything, right? So people came into this scheme and then they promoted to this position. Sometimes they even promoted to a different department. So that's what caused people to kind of go up in the hierarchy of the organizations, whether it's still an APD or others. So as far as how high it'll go, you know, it's still an ongoing investigation. Can't really say much more than that.
The FBI may
thank you
be
for trying, though.
That's my, yeah, I do what I can.
No, yeah.
The FBI may be the only agency that isn't implicated. I mean, it really is that broad in terms of county, APD, state police.
Right.
What is it going to take for these organizations to get trust back with the public?
And I think it's some of what you're seeing now, right, with the respective chiefs and the sheriffs just going out there and being vocal and saying, there's no place for this. And I can tell you on the part that people don't see is the conversations that I have with these chiefs and sheriffs where they're completely open with me and say, hey, we're in 100%. We're going to work with you. We want these bad apples out. What do you need from us? Our records are open. Our records are your records. Obviously, there's other legalities that we got to follow within the state. But yeah, they're 100% on board because they want to make sure that they get these people out. And some of them, you know, because they go from one department to the department, and everyone's concerned with that piece is that, okay, so they feel a little pressure here, so maybe I'll just go to this department, or maybe I'll go to a tribal police. We want to make sure that we get them. We make sure that they come giglio impaired. So at least that highlights to a smaller department that says, wait a minute, there's concerns here, issues here, maybe we got to do a little homework and maybe not offer this person a job right from the get-go, which is what's been happening year after year here within the state.
You think that will change? Because there are certain
100%.
departments that are famous for that, for taking on
100%.
what we would call compromised officers, and they get a new start somewhere else.
I think that's already happening now, where they want to make sure that they're doing the follow-up questions, obviously with the state, wanting to find out, is there something that happened because they say that they were a police officer with this department, what department, and if they can't get a hold, maybe an HR person in that department, when they're talking to the state, maybe to licensing and those types of things, they're asking those questions like, am I getting to someone else's problem? Are they trying to get away from something? Or is this someone that should be a law enforcement officer?
We'll be right back with more of the New Mexico News Insiders.
Hi, I'm Logan Rader, host of New Mexico Living. New Mexico News Insiders is sponsored by New Mexico PBS.
If you like New Mexico News Insiders, learn more about New Mexico in Focus, a weekly hour-long show analyzing decisions impacting New Mexico statewide. Stream it anytime, anywhere. Visit nmpbs.org and follow them on all social media platforms.
Now back to New Mexico News Insiders.
How many years in New Mexico now?
4 years.
As the chief, as the top, as the special agent in
Yes.
charge. What are you most proud of?
So I'm most proud of the men and women that I work with every single day, because you know, when I got here, they accepted me. I'm not from here. I'm from down the road, and you know, there's always that tension, if you want to look at it, between Texas and New Mexico, especially when you talk about colleges, right? Because I went to UTEP, UTEP at least definitely back in the day, and a lot less now, but back in the day, big rivalries, whether we're talking about state or UNM, but always that tension and whatnot. So I was kind of seen as an outsider, right? I had no clue what they meant by red and green chili, so, but this office really took me in, and most of them, I would say a majority of them, are from New Mexico. They taught me the ways, they accepted, and then they allowed me to just kind of be myself more than anything, right? Because I'm a little different, I think, if I think back to my past predecessors, and even if I think back to past SACs that I work with in other places, that you know, I want to get my hands dirty. That's the kind of person that I am, and they worked with me. They were willing to kind of give me a chance. They allowed me to be here and allowed me to kind of make them better, I hope. And I think together we did some great things to be impactful within the state.
What do you mean getting your hands dirty?
Well, you know, I always hate the sit behind the desk kind of thing and not really know anyone's names, because, yeah, we support them, but we support them from afar. To me, it's always about being present. You know, the part that I enjoy, the reason why I started this job was to go and actually do a difference out in the streets where the crime is happening. It wasn't to sit behind a desk getting, you know, paper cut. That was not my thing, and that's not what I ever wanted to do. And to me, it was just something that happened along the way. So when I got to this role, I said, well, I can do this, but I can also do that. And I think obviously they allow me to do that. They entertain me with it, right? They make sure that, sure, boss, you can come with us, but be in the back of the stack because we don't want to take responsibility for you. I'm okay with that. Yeah, they indulge me with it. But, you know, I appreciate that because I get to see it firsthand. And I'll tell you, we just, you know, and you were out there that day when we went after the individual that caused the fire bombings at Tesla and at the Republican Party. When we were there, and I was there when they did it, yeah, I got excited. You know, part of me was like regretting saying that I was going to retire because it brought me back to when I started this 27 years ago in law enforcement. It felt that new and it felt great.
What's the hardest part? What do you think the hardest part here?
Well, the hardest part here has been just it's nonstop, right? Sometimes you hope that, you know, crime in most places comes in waves, right? But it's not consistent. And here it's consistent. Like the next person that's going to come in is going to do great things because of the level of work. And that's not a good thing. I'm not saying that as a good thing because we're constantly going after individuals that are causing crimes against children, that are causing drive-by shootings, a lot more juveniles that are doing these things. We still have the constant flow of drugs and guns going back and forth between us and our not only the state, but also another country in Mexico. And that battle that continues in an open border. And it just seems that flow has never stopped. Now, it's great because, again, our folks like to work. They like to be active. They want to be impactful. But that surge just seems to continue, right? We're on this spike that just keeps going up. And I was hoping at some point we'd be leveling off a little bit. Now, if you look at the stats, the statistics show that crime has come down, but never to the level that I'm comfortable with saying I feel safe going in every single part of this state. No, I don't think any of us could say that.
So you still feel like we're in sort of a surge period of ramping up your work to fight back against a wave of crime?
100%. I think we know a lot more today about things that I didn't know about, 4 years ago. When I came here, we were just even still trying to put our hands around missing and murdered indigenous people, because when I was in headquarters coming out here, and this was a couple of AGs ago, and they were talking about, well, there's thousands of people that are gone missing, and it's more women than men, and all these different things. And it wasn't until we got here and actually really dove into that we saw, okay, it's still a problem, most definitely. One person is one too many, but it's not thousands. It's actually kind of rough when we started putting that list together, around 200 people that are confirmed missing or murdered or unsolved cases. But that's what that is. It's not thousands. So that was one big thing.
Biggest disappointment in your time here?
Well, I wish I could have stayed longer. I wish that I could be doing this a little more. So I think there's still, and it's not me, it's the men and women of the FBI will continue to do amazing things. My disappointment is I just won't be able to do it with them, right? I'll have to do it from the sidelines. I won't be cheering super loud, cheering from the pickleball courts, but I'll be doing it from afar.
But you're young, especially for a man in your position. Why now? Why would you get out?
I think some of it just seemed like it's like a new chapter, right? And I say that in a good way. If you go back to history tells us everything. After 9/11, we focused on terrorism, and we surged our resources. After every administration, there's always been an emphasis on things. And as long as we're doing things in the right way, then that's perfectly fine. At this point, it seemed like there was a different chapter. We're focusing on different things. It just seemed like a good time for me to transition to something else.
Is there something that's become a priority for the current administration, the Trump administration, that makes you uncomfortable or makes this job less desirable for you?
Not at all. Not at all. It's just different type of work. If you look at my background, I started as a school teacher, and then eventually I transitioned to immigration when it was still its own standalone agency before it had merged with Customs, and then the FBI. And the type of work that we're doing now is something I've done somewhere along those lines. And so I just see it as going back to something I did before, and now it's something that we're doing now. Just blending the two worlds together. It's not bad, it's not different, it's just unique to the FBI.
Just to be clear, so there's nothing about the current, because the Trump administration has caused, I think it's fair to say, chaos in some departments, discomfort in a lot of parts of the federal government. Your decision to leave the FBI has nothing to do with any of those changes.
Nothing to do with any of those changes.
What would you tell your replacement?
So I would tell my replacement, I would tell him and her to come in and take a little time getting to know not only the office, because they're amazing people, so take your time and kind of getting to know them, but getting to know all of you. Like, people that live in this state, listen to what they're concerned about in this state. Don't come in thinking that, well, this whole place must be broken, right? Because the last guy was a mess. Come in and really get to know what we care about, right? Because now I'm also one of these citizens in this state, and I'll tell you what I'm concerned about. Listen to the communities, and then try to do those things that they care about the most. And that's what I would tell them. Take your time.
What have you done as a special agent in charge to make your successor's job easier? What's the most important thing you've done to ease that you think will help them?
The partnerships. I think there's no chief, no sheriff within this state, or I would even say even the private sector, that I wouldn't pick up the phone, call, and would answer the phone, and the second thing that they would be saying, what can I do to help? And I think when I started this job, some of that, and this is coming out of COVID, so no fault of anyone's, but it was a different time. And we're in a better place now. Like, I feel good. Like, if something happened, as horrible as the thing happened out in Farmington, Gallup, Roswell, UFOs are attacking us out in Roswell, I'll call the phone, they'll pick up, and we'll get something done right away. Okay. Not an issue.
All right. I want to revisit a conversation you and I had a long time ago. I was asking you about...
Was it about pickleball?
It was not about pickleball. It was about crime.
Sure.
Was it bail reform, right? We had a rise in crime. Is it bail reform? Is it the jail settlement? We had overcrowding in the jail. Is it like what was driving crime? What continues to drive violent crime? And you surprised me with your answer.
Yep, it's two things, right? It's drugs and guns, and I still say that today, is that we have a desire for drugs, and that flow is going to continue. And in those organizations, when we're talking about the international drug trafficking organizations, the ones that are based out of Mexico, they're in it for $1, right? So whether they're selling us drugs, whether it's fentanyl, whatever the case may be, or they're trying to get people into our country illegal, they're all about making a profit, bottom line. And that's going to continue as long as we want to continue. As long as people want to come into this country, they're going to push that. But at the same token, we have guns. And we have plentiful amounts of guns. And these organizations, they want guns, right? Yes, they want the dollars, and that's how they started. But to them, a bigger currency is to have those weapons. And we have too many. We have plenty. So and they'll take that as currency. If you want, we'll sell you a pound of whatever the case may be. But if you have guns, we'll take that instead of giving us actual dollars. And as long as that doesn't change, as long as we still have readily available guns that we can transship down into Mexico, they'll continue sending those drugs and likewise. And nothing's going to change, nothing's going to happen unless we get control of one of these two things, either our appetite for drugs or our overall supply of guns.
How big is the gun problem in Mexico?
It's huge. I mean, you don't need to go and buy a gun at Walmart when you can just buy it on the corner. And probably the one on the corner is probably going to have all the features you want, whether it's be an automatic, pistol that's been converted into an automatic weapon, or a fully automatic assault rifle, whatever it is that you want, and probably for less.
How many bad guys who want guns have guns?
All of them.
How many teenagers who want guns have guns?
All of them. It's easy. They can get them at their school, or they can get them, at the local places that we can talk about, the neighborhoods that we all know, and the locations we all know. If they want them, and they got a couple $100 to spare, they're going to get them.
How do we solve this part of the problem?
So a lot of it starts with understanding that we do have a problem. And I think if I go back to my teaching days, is starting with in the home. Teaching kids that there's consequences. These kids today, there was a time, and I think me and you have talked about this, is that our parents were enough to keep us from doing something bad, or our grandparents, or there was someone in our community that we were concerned. The last thing we ever wanted to do was have an encounter with law enforcement. I had a conversation with a police officer just the other day where he was saying there was times when he would be cruising up and down the street, and someone would be drinking a beer, and they would be hiding because a police officer was coming down from drinking a beer. Now you drive by the same places, what are they doing? Taking fentanyl, smoking methamphetamine, and they're not trying to hide. They're doing it right in front of you. That's the difference. There's no consequences. These kids don't feel that anyone's going to tell them to do the right thing. And they're going to continue to do the thing. Their teachers, they don't respect them. They don't respect their parents. And somewhere along the way, we kind of lost that even as parents. My son wants to do something that's not appropriate, I'm going to stop him. It ends right there and it stops right there. Parents got to be able to do that. And I get it, it's hard. Parenting is not the easiest thing to do. But if we don't start there, and we assume that someone's gonna be able to do that or fill that void, whether it's a teacher or whether it's law enforcement, then you just let that problem get away from you. And unfortunately, those influences don't just kind of sort of ramp up. They ramp up, they spike, right? So they go from doing the small thing to doing the really horrible thing. It's no more about me and you having a conflict because we both like the same girl, and then we'll get into an actual physical fight. That's how things were handled back then. In their world today, because everything they see on social media, the answer to solve that problem is I'm going to take a gun and I'm going to try to shoot you and hurt you in that way. Something happened in there. We lost a lot of steps in between because we allowed our children to be raised by things that they shouldn't have been raised by things that they see somewhere else, things that get glorified by somewhere else. We need to get back involved in their lives. If you're expecting law enforcement to solve something, we're reacting to it already. We're reacting to trying to push back all these things that are already happening today. They need to start in the home, and we have to take that investment. I think our kids matter, right? That's what we should all be caring about, making sure that our kids go on to do bigger and greater things. Unfortunately, too many days, these kids don't even get past the age of 18 because their lives are taken way too soon.
We'll be right back with more on New Mexico News Insiders.
Hi, I'm Monica Wicki, host of New Mexico Living. This episode of New Mexico News Insiders is sponsored by New Mexico PBS. If you enjoy New Mexico News Insiders, check out New Mexico in Focus, a great source for insights about what's happening in our state. Catch their podcast and videos at nmpbs.org or stream it anytime, anywhere on the free PBS app. Now, let's continue to New Mexico News Insiders.
You talked about the problem being in the home, but we also do stories about straw purchasing, where it's not legal at the federal level to buy a bunch of guns and then sell them, pretend that you're the buyer and actually sell them off to people.
Right.
It doesn't seem like there's an appetite at the federal level to shut that down, because the way we find out about it is the straw purchaser buys a bunch of guns, sells the guns to different people, and it's not till the guns are found in crimes next to bodies that we track it back. This is the person who's been buying all these guns. Yeah. Is it a high enough priority at the federal level to I mean, the law's in place, that's not a legal avenue.
Right.
But there is certainly a supply of guns.
It's a big supply, and there is appetite to do those things. When you look at it in the context of everything else that's happening, at some point you do have to prioritize, because there's only so many resources that we can do. So you'd want to do a lot of that, and a lot of those purchases are happening on purpose by these straw purchasers with juveniles, and the federal system has just never been fully equipped to go after juveniles. We have so much work when it comes to just adults 18 and over, right? That it's hard to also now start putting our hands around something that are juveniles that are below the age of 18. Usually that was something that we would allow our state and local, who are a little bit more better established. Now New Mexico's is kind of a different place, but usually that was kind of the breaking point. Unfortunately, now it's broken, right? You're having juveniles doing adult crimes, and it's us trying to figure out what is the right pressure point for us to be able to deal with these types of things. And I don't know what the answer is yet. The problem is that there's still all of this that continues to grow over here on this side that's not going away. And this is now starting to become a bigger problem when they're talking about juveniles doing the same type of crimes, and we just can't do both. Just can't.
What happened to ask you that you might want to get on?
I mean, the only thing I would say is, so we're gonna stay in New Mexico, and that's a choice. Like if everything we've talked about, and if someone would probably listen, they'd probably say that's a horrible place. If you go online and you Google New Mexico or Albuquerque, what are you gonna see? Sometimes in the top 5, depending on which survey you're looking at. Sometimes in the bottom 13, but if you look at it by the population size, it probably sounds like a place I probably wouldn't pick. Like if I had all the places of choices for where I wanted to go, this one might not come up. I remember even when we drove here, never even knowing that we're going to be in New Mexico. I believe we were going from El Paso to West Virginia. So it was with that move that was going there. We stopped in Albuquerque, and we looked around and said, wow, this is a rough place. And that was back then. This was before really what it's become today. It felt rough to me back then. That was coming from El Paso, right, which I never thought was like the safest place, even though it's always top 5 as far as the safest. I don't know, I contest that. But anyways, I think we're way too honest in New Mexico when you look at those numbers. But I thought it was rough then. So when I came back, there was some of that like, wow, this is got a little bit more out of control, right? It seems even more so. Like that same place that we stopped back then, it feels a little unsafer today.
Really? Okay.
But what I would say to people really about New Mexico is that it's a really great place. And it's not because of the people, because 99% of the people that are here in New Mexico are here for the right reasons, wanting to see their neighborhoods and their communities grow, and you want to see bigger and greater things coming to the state. And those are the reasons why we're choosing to stay within the state, right? Our son's going to go, he's in high school, he's talking about even staying in the state, so that's really going to throw a wrench in our plans, but we're going to go with it, that's fine. This is a great place. We just need to work on the things. We need to really work on working together. And when we really say that we're going to work collaboratively and not just say we're going to do it, or no, we're not going to say we're going to do it for 90 days, we're not going to just do it for 60 days, or because someone had some big epiphany as to a great idea, but we're going to do it every single day, you're going to see that all these things that we're talking about, guns and drugs and crimes against children, and we didn't even talk about Indian country and what that's all about and everything that happens there as far as the crime goes, you'll see a difference if we do it consistently and we just say we're all going to tackle this problem because we all care about it. We don't care about it for 60 days or this month as opposed to next month, but we're going to do it for a year. Huge impact. Then all the places that we've talked about that we kind of avoid during this certain time, or you definitely never even think about going at 2 in the morning, it's less scary, right? It just feels more comfortable. It feels like back when it did when we were just growing up, being kids, not worried about someone getting shot tonight and maybe not coming home. We're just going out, and the worst thing that would happen is that we might get into a little trouble, might get into a little fist fight. That sounds bad, but I would do anything to be back to those days.
Are we going to see you back in law enforcement?
I don't know. Like all options are always out there, right? I would never. I think I'm always driven by, and will always be driven by giving back to the community, public service, and whatever form that may be. So all options are out there. I think for now I'll probably enjoy a couple days of just relaxing a little bit, and taking in, maybe one less phone call in the middle of the night. I'll probably still be awake and looking for that phone, but I think that'll be good. Looking forward to that.
That was the now former FBI special agent in charge of the Albuquerque field office, Raul Bujanda, in his exit interview with KRQE's Dean Staley. You may have caught on to some pickleball references in there. Full disclosure, he and Dean were paired up in a charity pickleball tournament the weekend before that interview, so there's some added context for our listeners.
Yeah, there you go. I am told they placed second in this tournament. I did not see this, but the research has told me this. So they were second in their group, silver medalists for pickleball, if you will. And we didn't get to hear about that accomplishment as the FBI SAC, but we will mention it here. So salute to Dean and Raul for a great job. Well done, guys. And also, on a serious note, of course, thank you to Dean and SAC Bujanda for really giving us more insight into the job of the FBI's work in Albuquerque and the work the agency continues to do now under new leadership. And hopefully you appreciated just seeing that kind of interview in a different format. Usually we bring the guests on here. This time was a chance to present a well-done interview in a different format here.
Yeah, and we don't know who will lead that department next, but I'll also note that Bujanda said the FBI's work on the DWI investigation, for example, that is not over and it will continue. So we'll continue to track new developments in that case and others for you all. If you have any story ideas or someone you'd like to hear from on our show, always feel free to reach out. I'm Gabrielle.Burkhart@krqe.com via email and gburknm on social media.
I'm also at Chris McKee TV and chris.mckee@krqe.com. And also most of our listeners are on Spotify. You can leave comments there. Also leave us a review on podcasts, Apple Podcasts specifically. And if you're watching on Fox New Mexico, this is a shortened version of the conversation. You can always check out the full versions of our podcasts on krqe.com/podcast and our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.